Baby, ya yo me enteré, se nota cuando me ve. Ahí donde no has llegado, sabes que yo te llevaré. Y dime qué quieres beber, es que tú eres mi bebé. Y de nosotros, ¿quién va a hablar si no nos dejamos ver?
Well, welcome back everyone to a new video. Today I'm going to be ranking my top 10 first basemen, and there are also some honorable mentions. Without further ado, let's get right into it. Again, I just want to go over what I did use to make these rankings. I used walk rate, strikeout rate, WRC plus, DRC plus, Steamer's projected WRC plus, xwOBA base running runs per 650, adjusted defense per 1,250 innings, plate appearances, and innings over the past 3 years. The walks, all the rates, they're weighted since 2018. So like I said, 14, 29, 57. There's also plate appearances mixed in there. So yeah, that's about as in-depth as I'm going to go on that, but they're pretty accurate, it seems. As for the adjusted defense, it's a little bit different for first baseman than it was for catchers. It's actually going to be the same exact thing throughout the infield, except with different positional adjustments. But for first base, basically what it is we are taking OAA, and you put it on a run scale, which means multiplying it by 0.75. I'm taking DRS and runs plays made. Runs plays made is basically the range factor for DRS, and I'm taking that out, and I'm taking the range factor out of UZR and averaging those together. So here's the formula right here. OAA times 0.75 plus DRS minus RPM plus UZR minus range runs divided by 2. So you basically just have the average of the non-range aspects from DRS and ZR. Basically, the reason this is because OAA is pretty much objectively the best range stat. I mean, nothing else really compares to it. It's super accurate. And then there's also some other aspects that are needed from DRS and UZR. So those are just factored in along with the OAA. And then it's put on a positionally adjusted scale. For first base, average is going to be about negative 10.7 defensive runs per 1,250 innings. So yeah, without further ado, let's get right into the rankings. Starting out, the honorable mentions is the newly acquired Kansas City Royals first baseman, Carlos Santana. I really like this pickup for them. Santana's a pretty good first baseman. He literally is my number 11, and I will say that. All the other guys, they're not in order, but Santana is my number 11. It was super close between him and the number 10 guy. I ended up just barely moving him down. Like, it was so tough. I didn't want to do it, but I had to. Santana's really good. I really like the pickup for them. He wasn't that good this year, but he got a little bit unlucky. He had a 108 DRC plus and a 360 xwOBA. So yeah, look for a bounce back here from Santana. Really, really, really like him. Next, the Diamondbacks first baseman, Christian Walker. Very good defensively. He's a pretty good hitter too. Really like him going into next year. He could just continue to be a really, really solid first baseman. Next guy is the Rays first baseman, Ji-Man Choi. Choi is pretty solid all-around player. Next, the Reds first baseman, Joey Votto. Joey Votto once was probably the best first baseman in baseball. I mean, he's just an on-base machine. He still is pretty good at getting on base. He's not that good of a defender anymore, which is unfortunate because that did add a lot to value, along with his insane hitting. But he's still a good first baseman, definitely an honorable mention. Next, we got the Twins first baseman, Miguel Sano, moving to first base. Great for him because he was atrocious at third base. So, yeah, definitely a good thing that he moved over to first base. He's pretty good. Strikes out a lot, but he also hits for good power. Not that good of a defender, but it's first base. So that is not going to take a ton of value from him. Next, Vlad Jr. I mean, statistically, he hasn't been great, but Steamer projects him as the second highest WRC plus among first basemen. Definitely someone that we could be on the lookout for a breakout season next year. Finally, the Astros first baseman, Yuli Gurriel, had a down year last year, but he's still a pretty solid first baseman and definitely worthy of a spot in the honorable mentions. All right, coming in at the number 10 spot, the Yankees first baseman, and people aren't going to like this one, but it's Luke Voit. Voit is he's pretty solid. The main thing that pushes him down is he's probably the worst defensive first baseman in baseball, and that's not an exaggeration. He is seriously awful. Negative 20.2 adjusted defense per 1,250. He's a very good hitter, though. He comes in at a 142 WRC plus. He's gotten a bit lucky. He has a 127 DRC plus, and Steamer only projects him at 115. I say only. 115 is still very good. I do like Voit, and I think he can be moved up, but I don't feel comfortable moving him up necessarily. I think he can be by the end of the year, but for now, number 10 is a good enough spot for Voit. Coming in at number 9, the Mets first baseman, Pete Alonso, unless there's a DH, but As of right now, it's looking like there won't be a universal DH in 2021. So Alonso is number 9. Alonso over Voit is probably going to be a bit controversial, but just listen to how they match up. Voit does have a slight edge in WRC plus, 142 to 133. They're the exact same in DRC plus at 127, and then Alonso has him in Steamer WRC plus at 121 and Voit at 115. Not to mention, Voit is a bit better defensively, which, like I said, it's not huge, but it's something at first base. So I really think this one could go either way, but as of right now, I'm sticking with Alonso. I think Alonso is definitely going to have a bounce back season, but yeah, as for right now, number 9, Pete Alonso. Now coming in at number 8, seriously, this dude is so underrated. He's one of the most underrated first basemen in baseball. Brandon Belt. Belt has he's always been pretty good. And if you look at 2019, he had a down year. He wasn't that good. He had a 98 WRC plus, although he got a bit unlucky. He had a 106 DRC plus and a 350 xWOBA. This year, he was very good. He had a 172 WRC plus, a 147 DRC plus, and a 402 xWOBA. Bell is definitely something I like a lot going into next year. He should continue to be a very, very, very good player. In the sample, he has a 119 DRC plus, and Steamer projects him at a 115 WRC plus for next year, so that's right around the same. Plus, the main thing that pushes him over Alonso and Voit is the defense. He is one of the top defensive first basemen in baseball. I know it's not huge, but again, it's something. And with how bad Alonso and Voit are, that definitely does not help their value one bit. So yeah, I'm definitely expecting big things from Brandon Belt going into 2021, and definitely keep a lookout for him. Coming in at number 7, the Phillies first baseman, Rhys Hoskins. Hoskins is a guy that I love, and he is one of the most underrated players in baseball, and I will confidently say that too. Hoskins in this sample has a 124 WRC plus. He's overperformed that a little bit with a 121 DRC plus, but that's not a huge difference at all. He also has a 353 xWOBA, so that is pretty high, and a 120 Steamer WRC plus for next season. He was very good in 2020 at a 127 DRC plus and a 140 WRC plus. He's pretty good. He's a decent defender, negative 12.3, so he's right around average. That's just a bit below average, so that's not something you really worry about at first base. But yeah, Hoskins, he is the main thing that pushes him down is a little bit of a sample size, not enough to put him over the next guy, which is the AL MVP, maybe undeservedly so, but the AL MVP, nevertheless, Jose Abreu. Now, someone has to let me know, is that the first time that 2 first basemen have ever won MVP in the same year? Because that is crazy if it was, first of all, and second of all, I wouldn't be surprised if that has never happened before, because first basemen just don't win MVPs. They're not as valuable as other positions. Abreu, nevertheless, had a fantastic year. He had a 140 DRC plus, a 166 WRC plus, and a 379 xWOBA. He, in this sample, has a 133 WRC plus, which he has overperformed a little bit, a 120 DRC plus, but a 368 xWOBA, that's still very, very good. He's not that good of a base runner, but it's not a huge focal point at first base, I wouldn't say. He also is, he's around average defensively as well. I feel like the bad defense narrative is a bit overplayed from him. He had a good defensive year in 2020. 2019 to 2018, he was but, still not bad. Steamer projects him at a 115 WRC plus for next year. I definitely think he can go beyond that. I think he'll have a 120 to 125, especially coming off last season. He is a bit of a free swinger, so that's definitely always a sign of regression, but I still think he can have a very good offensive year. And he is always a high-volume guy as well, which is mainly what puts him over Hoskins, because Hoskins kind of has him beat rate-wise, but rate, again, is not the only thing that matters. Volume definitely matters. So, yeah, Jose Abreu coming in at number 6 spot. This feels like a very, very good spot for him. Coming in at number 5, the Dodgers first baseman, Max Muncy. Muncy was incredible in 2018 and 2019. He came from the A's, where he was just not good. And then with the Dodgers, he was great. He had back-to-back years of over 130 DRC plus and over 130 WRC plus for that matter. In 2020, he was not that good, but I do think he's going to have a bounce-back year. He has a 15.6 walk rate and a 25.2 K rate, so he's definitely disciplined. Steamer projects him at a 115 WRC plus, but I think he can definitely go above that as he has a 125 DRC plus and a 126 WRC plus. He's also a good base runner, and his defense is kind of shaky, but it's not that bad. It comes in at negative 14.6, which is kind of surprising to me, honestly, because Muncy is a pretty good defender at other positions, I know. Muncy is a great first baseman, and he could definitely find himself up towards that. I mean, before the year, he was arguably the best first baseman in baseball. He could definitely find himself towards that 1 to 2 if he has a strong year in 2021. Coming in at number 4 is going to be the Chicago Cubs first baseman, Anthony Rizzo. Now, Rizzo, another guy who had kind of a down year in 2020. He had a 103 WRC plus, but if you look at the peripherals a little bit more, he actually had a 123 DRC plus last year. So, bit of bad luck. He's going to bounce back. I really hope he does. He had a 339 xWOBA as well, which is the lowest he's had in the past 3 years, but it's still good. Steamer projects him at a 126 WRC plus, which I really love. If he has a 126 WRC plus, I'll be ecstatic. He has a 129 DRC plus weighted and a 124 WRC plus. So you can argue he's been unlucky, and a 368 xWOBA. Rizzo, of course, also a very good defender at first base. Negative 8.4 adjusted defense per 1250. Remember, average is around negative 10.7 because of the positional adjustments. Rizzo, super consistent, definitely going to bounce back, have around a 125 plus WRC plus. Number 4, Anthony Rizzo. Coming in at the number 3 spot, the best defensive first baseman in baseball, Matt Olson. Olson, very good player. He's pretty complete. He is a great defender. Negative 0.4 adjusted defense per 1250. Far and away the best. Like, it's not even remotely close. The next best guy, I think, is Paul Goldschmidt, who comes in at negative 6. But Steamer projects him at a 121 WRC plus for next year. He has a 117 DRC plus and a 120 WRC plus. He also has a 362 xWOBA. He did have a down year in 2020, but I'm not too worried about that. He can definitely get back to what he was. Olson's a very good player. And the defense definitely elevates his value. Like I said, even though it is first base, obviously defense still matters, and defense really pushes him up on the lists a lot. Next up, the first baseman for the St. Louis Cardinals, Paul Goldschmidt. I honestly didn't expect myself to be putting Paul Goldschmidt this high, but here I am. Goldschmidt, I think him and Olson could be argued like they're pretty interchangeable, but I have Goldschmidt over Olson for now by just a bit. He does have a little bit of a lower Steamer WRC plus at 119, but his DRC plus is higher, 125. His WRC plus is way higher at 132, and he's got a 375 xWOBA. He's also a very good defensive first baseman as well, like I just mentioned. Negative 6 adjusted defense per 1,250 innings. He's just another great all-around player. He's also maybe the best base running first baseman in baseball. I don't know if he is, but he's up there for sure. 2.9 base running runs per 650, which is something you don't see from first baseman again. Usually they're all bad base runners. And he's also a very good hitter, and he's also a very good defender. So yeah, number 2 feels like a good spot for Goldschmidt. Goldschmidt is number 2. Finally, last but certainly not least, I assume consensus first baseman in baseball at this point, Freddie Freeman. Freeman had an insane year in 2020, and unlike that dude from the White Sox, his MVP was 100% legit. He was definitely the best player in the NL last year. He had a 187 WRC plus, and his peripherals were pretty great as well. He had a 172 DRC plus and a 441 xWOBA. Not to mention, he plays great defense. He's actually gotten better each of the past 3 years. In 2018, he was at negative 8.5. In 2019, at negative 7.3. And last year, at negative 6.8. So that's a steady increase each year in defensive runs per 1,250 innings. His WRC plus comes in at 154 and his ERC plus at 150. I can definitely see him getting close to 150. I don't think he will. I think he'll be closer to 140, but either way, that puts him as the number 1 first baseman in baseball. Steamer has him at 138. So yeah, he's a super balanced player. Like, he is really balanced, really good. Freeman is no doubt in my eyes, the #1 first baseman in baseball. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Again, probably didn't agree with some of the stuff I said, so please let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Leave a like if you did enjoy, subscribe. Obviously, go follow my Twitter at HaywardTroy. You can ask me questions on there as well. I'll always be happy to answer your questions. I do hope you enjoyed this video. Go check out my catchers video if you haven't already, because there's some controversial stuff on there too, I'm assuming. So yeah, I do hope you guys enjoyed. And next position is second base, so keep a lookout for that. Until next time, I am Jason Hayward Stan.